Hello, brothers and sisters in the global LDHR community. I am glad to be coming to you today to share about the results of the recently completed Global Staff Lifecycle Assessment. We were thrilled with the participation and with the ability to do it, partly because if this would be something we could do annually, we'd be able to actually look at our progress towards sustainability at the national level and see where we are globally. It has the advantage of informing national leaders and informing global leaders on where we're doing well and where we might need improvement. So I'm excited to be coming to you today to share a little bit of those results. Here we go. The staff life cycle, April 2023. The assessment itself, those of you who receive it might remember that it was 40 questions, and it was divided among the 6 phases of the staff life cycle. The quantitative data that we'll look at today, the questions were on a 5-point rating scale. 1 was strongly agree, and 1 was strongly disagree, and 5 was strongly agree. We encourage people that if they weren't currently doing what the question asked about, to please use a 1. So when we see a low score, it's not necessarily that people are disagreeing with the fact of the question. They're saying, hey, we are not there yet. The survey was offered in 4 languages: English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. It was sent to LDHR leaders in 141 countries, LDHR or someone who was representing LDHR in that country. It was determined by the regional LDHR leaders. 98 countries participated or responded. 19 in stage 1, 21% of all the stage 1 countries. 63 stage 2, which was 63% of the stage 2 countries, and 16 stage 3 countries, which was 100% of all the stage 3 countries. And we were thrilled with that level of participation. These were the 6 phases, and the 40 questions were grouped among these 6, plus a specific section on the leadership pipeline. In our movement, these first 3 phases, recruiting, application, and onboarding, happen in a relatively short amount of time. The development and retention part could last decades. And so how our staff experience those first 3 can set up the next 2. But a lot of that experience of development and retention happens in the local team environment. It's where the phrase, I am known and I am needed and I have a future, it's where that gets lived out. And so we want to be paying attention to what's going on for our staff in their tenure with us. We're going to look at quantitative data first. So I need a drum roll background here somewhere. Here's what we found out. 3.4 in recruiting, 3.3 in application, 3.8 in onboarding, 3.4 for development, 3.5 for retention, 3.4 for retire or separate, and 2.8 for leadership pipeline. Now, what that tells us is there's probably some people that do have 5 and 4 in their rating scale, and there's others who are down at the 1 or 2 because they just may not have gotten there yet, or they haven't started. So this tells us basically, if we were to do this annually, which I hope we will do, it will show us what kind of progress are we making in each of these. How do we become better at offering our staff the best possible experience as they're with us from beginning through however the Lord leads them in terms of their entire tenure with us. These were the top 10 most favorable questions. In other words, what were the ones that were the highest rating? 2 out of the top 3 have to do with ministry partner development. And I'd have to give a big shout out to the fund capacity leaders who have helped us to adopt a really good training in personal ministry partner development, as well as team and corporate. But number 1 was our new staff receive adequate training in ministry fund development. Second question, I'm aware of our ministry leadership needs. That's for all us in LDHR. Do we need to be aware of them? Yes. And then we need to begin to look at the practices that will help us actually begin to meet those needs. The third, our leaders give time for our staff to focus on ministry partner development. Our new staff receive an orientation to our national ministry. We intentionally and regularly refresh the vision of our staff. How important is that when you're in the middle of ongoing work every day? Some days it's fruitful and some days it's not. And we all need to have our vision of the Lord, his kingdom, and his ability, what he's called us to, refreshed on a regular basis. Our staff understand the qualifications for new staff to join us. You know, it's interesting. This question made me think about what are our assumptions about how recruiting takes place. And we're in an interesting time in the ministry right now where historically, all of our recruiting took place from the field and largely through the campus ministry. We're at a point in time now, though, where there's some very specialized needs. It's going to take some recruiting that is maybe outside the typical field, or a different way to look at field recruiting to recruit the kind of specialty functions that we need. Then as we go on, it says our new staff training result in staff who are competent and active. Yay, what a good start. It lays the foundation for the rest of your staff experience. Our staff receive adequate care during times of crisis. We do want to come alongside and care for people as best we are able. We are able to process new staff applications in a timely manner. Let's not leave people hanging out there for a long period of time. And then team leaders and team members have regular conversations about their individual ministry goals and development. If there's feedback included in those conversations and conversations about people's potential and their future, we actually have the foundation of a very good development function. So I was pretty excited about seeing those 10 as our top 10. Now, what was on the other end? What were the least favorable questions or the lowest scoring questions? Let's take a look. Just a reminder, we encourage people to rate a question a 1 if they were not currently practicing what was asked. So look at this. All of the questions are in the leadership pipeline section. That tells me that we probably haven't started to do some of the work that we need to do to develop next generation leaders. We have sufficient manpower? Nope. We use a process to identify the next generation of leaders. Who are the folks with potential that the Lord is raising up? Not so strong. All our national leadership team members are developing people to replace themselves. Every leader should be doing this. It's just good leadership practice. Think about Moses and Joshua, Paul and Timothy, Jesus and the 12, always investing like in the next generation. And we know the level of readiness of the next generation of leaders. And our national team leader has a succession plan. So these questions are pretty straightforward and they can improve pretty quickly with a little bit of intention, and deliberate follow through. Let's take a look by region. We might maybe have expected to see some gigantic differences, and there are some differences that we can see as we look at the color spread. But we're in the same space in many of the categories. And I think one of the challenges that the regional leaders will have will be to look at which countries are the strongest in which practices and what can we learn from each other as we're going through. Global results by country stage. Again, Were there expectations that we might see stronger scores for stage 3 countries? Perhaps. But it's very interesting to me that onboarding is the strongest in stage 3 countries, and the end of the staff life cycle, the retirement or separate, that those are strong. That a lot of times has to do with benefits and things like that. And so it makes sense to me that a country that is well developed will have that worked out more than a country that's in stage 1 or even stage 2. But in the practice of the development and retention phases, all things are pretty equal. And honestly, that should be true. Most of the development and retention practices are not driven by funding or capacity. They're driven by what a team member experiences on their local team. And so I think there's a lot of encouragement to be taken that we have some very similar results in those two phases. Now you'll notice as we follow through from the leadership pipeline, it was our lowest scoring category. So it is feasible. We were wondering about that. I said it is feasible that you could be doing development activity like an IBS or MPD training or team leader training, but not actually be focused on intentional development of the next generation. And it's not just intentional development of the next generation for its own sake. It's related to how do we reach the scope of the country? What has God called us to do on our strategic plan? The leadership pipeline piece, which we'll come back to at a later time, is super important when we think about national sustainability, strengthening national ministries. How do we get to a place where national ministries raising up their own leaders and are able to recruit, onboard, develop, retain people who are willing to serve over a long period of time and interested or qualified for leadership? It's a good question, right? So generally speaking, this gives us our starting point when we look at all of these quantitative results. Question I have for you would be, what do you see as you look at these results? As you think about your national experience, as you think about your regional experience, what are you seeing around you? And let me ask you this, what might you like to hear more about? I would love to see some of your responses in the global LDHR community on workplace. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks for all you do. As you know, LDHR calls out the best in anybody who's serving in it, because you have to think about every person, you have to think about every category of staff, you have to think about every strategy. And what does it mean when we look at our national strategic plan? What does that tell us in LDHR that we need to focus on? So it's a challenging job. It's one of the best jobs to be able to really prepare, equip, recruit the people for the Great Commission. Thanks for all you do.